Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and connoisseurs of the written word. Today, we'll be talking about a rather rare word, um, a word that sounds so scientific that I wish it were in more common usage. Okay? So, let us first write out the word and then discuss what it means. It has both an adjective form and a noun form. Okay? So we'll write out, let us first write out both of these words. Let's write out the adjective version first. E N D E I C T I C. Endeictic. 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 Okay, so this is the adjective. Okay. Now this word also has a noun form, and that word is E N D E I X I Endixis. Okay, so that's your noun. Now, what do these two words mean? Let us first look at endeictic. Now, endeictic means basically um, showing something, indicating something, or exhibiting something, or demonstrating something. Okay, so it's an adjective. Whereas endixis, let's make the words here. Endixis is the noun, and basically it means an indication. Okay, an indication of something. So when you have an indication of something, you use the word endeictic. When you simply want to say an indication, you use the word endixis. Okay, these are rather abstract terminology, a very scientific sounding two words. So to get a better flavor for what they mean and how they're used, let us use them in a mountaineering context. All of us know that when we climb a mountain, it doesn't have to be a mountain, it could even be a hill. A hill as small of altitude as just say 500 meters, half a kilometer. So even at that low altitude, we're not talking Himalayan altitudes of 28,000 feet or 27,000 feet, simply 500 meters, which comes to around 1,500 feet. Okay? Even on climbing such a small hill, I don't know how many of you have done it, but even after climbing such a small hill, you find that you're panting excessively. I mean, really panting. Even though you may be climbing very slowly, you're panting like mad. You're panting like crazy. At first, you think that is because you're out of shape. But then you realize that couldn't be the reason because you were, pretty faithful to your daily exercise regimen and that you should not be panting this heavily for such a small amount of exertion. Remember, you're climbing very slowly. And then it strikes you what the actual reason is. The reason is with increasing altitude, the amount of oxygen in the air falls. Air becomes thinner. And at Himalayan altitudes, it becomes so thin that you could actually die unless you have supplemental oxygen, supplemental oxygen tanks. Okay, so when there's less oxygen in the air, in thin air, your lungs have to do a lot more work to extract those exiguous levels of oxygen. In other words, you pant. Even though you're moving very slowly, you still pant. You would be panting that heavily at ground level if you were running, never when you are walking, or even when climbing up a staircase, for instance, at a comparable speed. So, given this background, we can use the word endeictic to illustrate the situation. Okay? So here goes. His panting was so heavily, or rather, his panting was so heavy and so disproportionate to his exertion that clearly it was endeictic of his incipient asphyxiation. Okay? Now we're talking really huge altitudes, like say 27,000 feet, where you could actually asphyxiate to death, die of oxygen starvation. So there you have one use of the word endeictic. He was panting so heavily, or rather, his panting was so heavy and so disproportionate to the level of his exertion that clearly it was endeictic of an incipient, imminent asphyxiation. So we have used the adjective version of the word endeictic. So let us use the word endixis, a noun, in a similar context. His panting was extremely heavy. It an endixis of asphyxiation. So now here we have used the word endixis again in the same situation, but in the noun form. So endeictic and endixis are more abstract and more scientific sounding words that are more appropriate in a scientific setting. Okay, respiration physiology, high altitude physiology, the physiology of the Sorosh. All of you heard about the Sorosh, altitude sickness, where your lungs filled with liquid, and you literally drown at high altitudes because of all the liquid in your lungs. Oxygen can't get across. As it is, the oxygen levels are very low at these high altitudes, and if your lungs are filled with liquid, pulmonary edema, as a result of pulmonary edema, that little oxygen cannot get across in your alveoli, cannot get to the hemoglobin, and you die of oxygen starvation. You just don't become sick, you actually die. It's a serious matter. And many mountaineers die at altitudes precisely because of this high altitude phenomenon, physiological phenomenon called pulmonary edema. Okay, so in a setting like that, uh, the word endeictic, endixis, and endixis come into their own. They're an abstract terminology to describe abstract scientific physiological phenomena. So it's a lovely word. And I hope that those of you who are scientists and those of you who are in respiration physiology um, use this word. The next time you write a scientific paper on the Soros, the word Soros comes from, I think, South America. You know, they have the Alps there, and many of the people living at those high altitudes, mind you, people just don't climb up to those altitudes. You know, they actually live there. And while many of them are well adapted to those high altitudes, some of them do periodically suffer from mountain sickness. This mountain sickness there is called Soroche, Soroche, if I remember correctly. That's the spelling of that word. And we have a pathophysiology of respiration at these extreme altitudes. Okay, so two new words to add to your scientific vocabulary, and kindly use it in your next scientific paper, and perhaps in the acknowledgement section of that scientific paper, perhaps you could mention this YouTube channel as having given you these two lovely new words. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'll stop for now, and we'll pick up again on a new word in the next video. Bye.